Hello and welcome to Investors Platform. Today's guest is a property investor and sourcer based in Birmingham, Ciaran Durkin. How are you doing today, mate?
Thanks for having me on, Joe. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. So, just to jump back into your background and actually how you got into property, what did it look like before you actually got into property?
Well, let's have a look. If I go just back a little bit further, so even from birth, all throughout my childhood, my dad is a bricklayer and a developer for the last sort of 30 years, I suppose. He's retired now. And mum and dad were always buying places. Typical builder story: you buy a place, you move in, sell it, buy again, you do that. So I was always moving every 2 or 3 years. I was always around, sort of. They didn't have loads or anything like that. They might have one buy to let, and then they'd be buying a property, do it up, live in it, sell it on, and move from there. So the constantly moving between houses was always something that I wasn't aware of, that it was any different when you're a child. It is what it is. Um, it's only when I got older and I started looking back, I thought, okay, that's probably had an effect on me and possibly steered me in the property direction. So that was certainly background when I was younger. When I got a bit older, went to college. Had no idea what I wanted to do. Went to uni. Had no idea what I wanted to do. The only reason I went was because I was trying to delay, I suppose, making a decision. In fact, in between college and uni, my dad was working in America, in New York, bricklaying. So I went out for the summer to work with him, and that steered me away from any trade or anything like that. It scared the life out of me, hated it. Just a bit too much hard work for my liking. So, 100-degree heat and all that sort of stuff. So, came back, decided to go to uni and sort of dossed around, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. Really didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm not the sort of person, really looking back, shouldn't have went to university. I need a bit more structure in my life. And university, you can sort of do what you want, really. So left to my own devices, I did very little. So yeah, that was a little bit of a disappointment if I look back on that. Came out of that, then did a state agency very briefly. So it was only, I think, 9 months, but it was useful because it got me understanding a little bit more, not hugely, but just about my patch where I still buy now. So I got to know the area very well, all the streets, so you know what type of properties there are. And then just seeing people coming in, it tweaked your interest because you see people coming in and they're investors. Some of them are, relatively young, and you sort of think, how are they buying these properties? They're only not that much older than me, and they're in and out, and they're coming in their nice cars. Not that I care about nice cars, really, but you could see that they were doing well for themselves. So that sort of piques your interest as well. Left there, went into recruitment, hated that, but did it for a few years, and then eventually started buying. Friends of mine had started buying the odd rental property, cheap areas in ex-council houses, but they were getting really, really good rent. So that piqued my interest as well. And then started looking for myself, and we bought. Actually, no, sorry, going back, I bought my first one in 2012. So, so yeah, that was probably off the back of being an estate agent. I knew in the areas what they'd sold for before, when they were, in peak 2006, 7, 8. The flat was, I bought a flat for my first property, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But the flat was sold new in 2006 for 130,000, I think it was. They obviously got repossessed, whoever bought it, and I bought it for 79, I think, in 2012. So my very basic understanding of investment at that point was, well, someone else has paid 130,000 for it, and then 5 years later I'm going to pay 79,000 for it. It's got to be a good deal. That's probably the extent of my research at the time. It's thankfully got a bit better since, and I'm able to analyze the deal a bit better now. But as far as my lack of experience then, that's how I analyzed the deal. And yeah, there were some good points about it and some bad points about that particular deal. But and we can talk about that. But yeah, that was certainly my first property, and then we've sort of just gone from there.
Yeah, so obviously your dad being a bricklayer by trade,
Yeah.
and moving into the estate agency sector, were you looking at like return on investment? Were you looking at the properties from a investor point of view, or what was your kind of, what was your goal as an estate agent, or was it literally just a job at the time?
It was just a job. My friends were doing the job in a different branch. So it was literally, I had to get a job. I was getting a bit of grief off mum, still living at home. He's still dossing around, still not doing anything. So I had to do something. My mate said, look, there's a job here. we have a good laugh doing it, you know. So it was simple as that. There was no, oh, I'm going to get in and I'm going to learn about the industry and then I'm going to go and build a property portfolio. It was none of that. It was literally, I need a job. This is an easy job to get. Went through a couple of interviews and obviously done all right. Got the job, and that was that. There was no look. Oh, look, Dad's a bricklayer, so if I do this, I can. You know, there was no thought process behind it really. It was just stumbling and bumbling through life, and
Yeah.
and then it sort of eventually led into obviously going into property full time, and that's my career now. But yeah, there was no set plan. There was no intelligence or anything there. That's for sure.
So that first deal then, that was a flat, right?
Yes.
So are there any nuances in terms of buying a flat, and any learning lessons that you got from buying a flat, and have you bought any more flats going forward?
Well, I suppose there was a few things I learned on that. The flat was in an okay area, but not great area, and it probably got worse, and probably is a little bit worse now than maybe then. So area wise is really important. Make sure you're buying in decent sort of areas. Again, like I said, because I had seen that it sold for 130 in the peak, the extent of my research, 79, oh, it must be, it must be a great deal then. And I thought it would go back up to 130, because all prices rise again. So I sold it in 2020 for 105. So there was a little bit of a gain there, but if I worked it out not long ago, if I bought a house at the same time for probably a little bit more, but it would have doubled in that time. Houses have roughly doubled in our area at that time. So I would have done a lot better from that point of view. But look, I didn't know that at the time. Ground rent, not ground rent actually, service charge. Service charges on those types of flats, these big new builds where there's 50, 100, 150 flats, whatever it may be. The service charge just kills any profit that you're having. Now, mortgage rates were low at the time. Interestingly, because it was my first property and I didn't know what I was doing, I went on repayment. It's the only mortgage I've ever had, investment property, that I've ever done on repayment. So that affected how much, obviously, rental income, profit I was making each and every month. But I benefited further down the line because actually when I sold it, I think there was only 50 on the mortgage. So I got back when we sold it 55, which then I was able to put into our plot of land that we bought and built our house. So there's good and bad points, I suppose. Like I say, all my properties that I buy now are interest only. So that being capital repayment, it certainly, it felt the pinch at the time. I could have done with the extra rental income, the extra money coming in, but you do benefit longer term, obviously, because it's being paid down. So it depends on your strategy and how you're going about it. Would I buy another flat again? I have bought one more flat since, and I would buy flats again, but not that type of flat. The flat that I would buy would be in a smaller block. It would be owned, the freehold would be owned by the council because they don't have their extortionate service charges. The service charges might be on the flat that I've bought since and some others, a couple £100 a year. So that doesn't really take a huge dent out of the profit that you're having. So I would buy flats, but on the whole, it's my target is really houses, really. I know it's different for everybody in whichever area that you invest, but for me, houses would always be a preference. I prefer to have the freehold. I prefer to have the choice to do with the property what I want, really. So yeah.
So after buying that first flat, what was your strategy going forward after buying that flat? Obviously, you then realised how much your service charge, everything else cost, it was actually affecting your return on investment. What sort of strategy did you have when you originally started in property then after that one?
I think you're giving me too much credit, Joe, to have any strategy. There was no strategy. Strategy came later. What did I do then? So I bought 3 properties in quite quick succession. There maybe like 3 properties in, well, quickish, 2 years, maybe 2.5, with a friend. I didn't have the money to buy any more by myself. My friend had some money, but obviously wanted to come in. You get a bit of peace of mind doing it with someone else. Trusted my friend. So we bought 3 properties in, let's say, 2.5 years. Again, these were in ex-council houses, but get really good yield. I think the first one we bought was 57,000 and the rent was 675 a month, something like that. So really good yields at the time. and we done really well at them. You know, like I say, the yields were good. We kept them for a certain amount of years, and then we sold them on, and we done well out of them. So, but again, there was no real strategy. We just sort of stumbled across it, made offers on things, bought it because it seemed a good price. The rent was good compared to the mortgage that we were paying at the time. So again, there was no real strategy of, look, this is the type of property that we're going to look for. This is how we're going to find it. This is what we're going to do with it. We're going to keep it this long. There was none of that. It was just, let's buy a property. We had a bit of money, let's buy one. Then we had a bit more money, and we left our money building up in the account. So right, put that towards the next one. So that was the extent of our thought process, I suppose. So yeah, no, strategy came way later. Yeah.
And then you went into a family-run business. You actually founded a business with your mum, right? Um, when did that actually start? When did you actually start, incorporating the business and going, right, I think I found a strategy now. Let's try and incorporate a business and scale it.
So alongside when we were buying all these properties, obviously I was still working full time, and we went into a business. So my mum and her then partner, now husband, started a nursing recruitment business, and we'd all been in a similar business previously. So I came in that I was a director, but like only a small shareholder in it. So we all worked in that, and we all worked in that for quite a few years. But it really wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't really want to be doing it, and then I was just sort of gradually buying properties on the side. So that's when the intention, I started listening to a lot more podcasts, just podcasts every day on the way to work, getting to work, hating what I was doing, and then podcasts on the way home and thinking, this is what I want to do really. But then look, how do you get into this? How do you step away from a job and do this? So then I started thinking of how can I do that? Started formulating a plan. And then I think 2018, yeah, it was 2018, we had to step away from the recruitment business because of certain legislation made it sort of nigh and impossible to continue. So then myself and mum, we were doing the same thing. We both had properties. There was no point mum going one way, looking, me looking. We both needed a job as such. So we set up the company in 2018, and that's when we started buying. And we've been going now. What is it? Six years? Yeah. So set up the company, Compass Property Solutions Midlands Limited. Bit of a mouthful. And yeah, we set that up in 2018, and yeah, been going ever since.
So it's quite interesting when we actually did a video on your latest project on Warwick Road, and you explained how you run one side of the business and your mum runs the other side. So you're more the man on the ground, going out finding deals, project management and that sort of thing. Your mum's more the letting side and the admin side. What was the reason behind that? Is that both your strengths kind of thing? And
yeah. Probably is our strengths. My passion would always be, I love, like, even before I was buying, I was always looking at property, like we all do, look at property, £1 million houses that you couldn't afford. I've always been looking at properties every day, probably for the last 15 years on Rightmove, what's selling in my area. So I just always wanted to have a good grasp of what was available, what things are selling for. And because I knew all that, it didn't make sense then for mum to be out looking, because she didn't have that as much knowledge of local areas as I would. She obviously knows about buy to let, as she's had them for years. She's done a new build with my dad years ago, but it didn't make any sense for us to duplicate that. So because I have a passion for it, I was always interested in properties. It naturally meant that I would go and find the properties. We mixed, I suppose, probably doing the property management at the start. But then we felt actually really mum's strength is better. She's probably a bit more, well, no, she is. She's a bit more patient. She's a bit more, probably better with people, truth be told. Not maybe quite as reactive as I would be. So it made sense that mum deals with the tenants, and then I would spend all my time, because really that's how we were going to grow the business. We had to go gain more and more properties. And my skill set is probably wasted on, I don't know, doing a viewing or going to see a tenant because something's gone wrong or whatever it may be. So yeah, it just made sense that my skill set, stick it to finding the properties, dealing with the refurbs, or finding a build team, whatever it may be. I'm always looking. I'm always on, the Facebook landlord groups and things like that. Always trying to find little bits of ways we can do things or save money, or have we tried this? And then I'll bring it to mum and we'll see what we can implement. So yeah, unfortunately for mum, I'm sure she'd tell you if she was speaking to you, she has to do the dog's body work. She does, oversee. We've got someone who does our accounts, but she has to oversee the accounts, invoices, tenants, if they're moaning about anything, if anything needs doing. Then yeah, mum does all that sort of stuff. So fair play to her for doing it, because I wouldn't want to do it.
So at this point in time, 2018, you have a bit more of an idea. You've got probably like 6 years of experience of buying and renting or flipping houses.
Yeah.
Got then at the start of 2018, did you have a bit more of an idea of what sort of thing you were going to push towards then?
Yeah. This is what I was referring to. This is when some sort of strategy came into play, because obviously we were stepping away from both our jobs in nursing recruitment. So we both needed to get properties, but there was no point getting load and load of single lets, because as we all know, single lets are good in some respect, but they don't return a huge amount of money. You might average, I don't know, depending on the interest rates, probably less so now, but previously £300 or £400 a month. So you've got to buy a lot of those to replace two people's salaries, haven't you? So naturally it made sense, right, well, what do we target? We've got to target HMOs. And really what we eventually stumbled on, and then we've targeted since, is multi-unit freehold blocks. So for anyone listening, it's usually Victorian buildings that have been sort of broken up into flats and studios. So that tends to be what we target now, as best we can. It's not always easy, but we tend to target those. They're our preference. But yeah, HMOs for sure is, like you alluded to earlier, we're doing not 12 bed. We won't say 12 bed. It's 3 4-bed HMOs in one building. But yeah, larger properties, because obviously naturally they're going to bring in larger income, which help to replace both of our salaries that we stepped away from, obviously, once the previous business closed down.
Oh yeah, and so the actually finding the deals and securing these sites, your go-to method is direct to vendor letters, right?
Yeah, I mean, going back to when I was going to my previous job, and I didn't like what I was doing really. So I mentioned I was listening to podcasts. So Inside Property Investing was probably the first one. I'm sure we've all listened to it. I was just listening to back to back to back to back, and listening to what people did, and you'd hear people doing serviced accommodation or HMOs or whatever it may be, every type of strategy. But it was always the HMOs. Because I'd had a bit of experience with it, with mum's HMOs. It was all that felt that was going to be the way that we were going to be able to sort of progress the business and be able to earn a lot more income coming in. So that was our target always. And listening to those podcasts, I'd hear a lot of people talking about direct to vendor letters, and me, like anybody else, was very skeptical of them. I was like, are they going to work? Why wouldn't they just go to an estate agent? Why would they sell the property maybe below market value? It doesn't make any sense. Surely it's not going to work. But that many people had said they worked. So I was like, well, they're either really good liars or it actually does work. So we might as well, we've got nothing to lose. So I can't remember how much the first batch of letters were done, but let's say it was a couple of hundred letters, and I physically walked the streets. I don't do that anymore, but I physically used to walk the streets of round in that particular area where we bought our first property, because I wanted to see what types of properties there were. I'd note down the rubbish ones where they had the old wooden windows. These were Victorian streets that you'd walk down. Every street, mid-terrace, end terrace, whatever it may be, Victorian properties, because they're the big type of properties that obviously are either HMOs or can be converted to HMOs. Birmingham at the time wasn't Article 4, so you could naturally just change properties. So yeah, direct to vendor, did my letters and got 2 really quick wins with that. We bought a single let, which was 2-bed mid-terrace house. The guy rang up and he said, "Oh, this, I'm looking to sell. This is what I'm after." I think he said 100 grand, and I knew at the time it was worth 130 without even looking at it. I knew it was worth 130, 140. So I was just asking him some more questions, what he was selling, just to get a better understanding. And he basically said, look, he's got enough money. He's got a business that he's sold. He's done very well for himself. The extra bit of money wasn't the main driving force behind his decision. What he didn't want is 20, 30 people traipsing through his house. He didn't want to deal with estate agents because he wasn't particularly, didn't trust them or believe them to do the perfect job. So really, we were able to come in at that point. It was and it is when you do direct to vendor letters, it's pure luck. Your letter has to land on their door on the day or the time when they're thinking, well, actually, you know what? I do want to sell. The vast majority of the time, 99.99999%, people pick them up, look at it, throw it in the bin. So there's a huge amount of luck involved. But yeah, so direct to vendor, we had two really good wins. That one, and then another one which was a multi-unit freehold block, which we still own. That was 4 flats and a studio, and got in touch with the vendor, went and viewed the property, agreed the deal, and yeah, like I say, still have it today. So I would say 70%. I've just plucked that figure out of nowhere, but 70-80%, something like that.
Yeah.
The vast majority of our deals, be it that we buy or that we source on, whatever it may be, they would come from direct to vendor. I just find you must have experienced this yourself, Joe. When you go to view a property that's on Rightmove that needs work, you are going to a block viewing. The estate agent arrogantly just tells you when it is. Oh, it's this Saturday at 2 o'clock. You can't make it, right? Tough luck, it's sold. So often you can't even get to these viewings. When you do, there's another 20 people there. So you're not going to be able to not dictate, but you're not going to be able to negotiate the terms or anything else, because 20 people, they're gonna get the price that they want. Whereas when it's direct to vendor, you're dealing direct with the owner, which I like, because you can then have a one-to-one conversation and you get to know them better. You get to know their reasonings for selling. And if it is money, and money is the driving force, then look, often it can't work, because we need to buy and we need to make a profit on it. We're a business, but only through having those direct conversations that you can find out that if you're dealing with an estate agent, half the time they don't know. They don't even ask the vendor why they're selling. They don't care. They just want to put it on the market and sell it. So yeah, direct to vendor would always be my preference. But I suppose it depends. I had the time, because I was stepping away from a job at the time, so I had a lot of time to work on a direct to vendor campaign. I do understand if you're doing 60-hour weeks, you're not going to then, when you get home, pick up your bag of letters and off you go, walking, traipsing the streets and putting them through letterboxes. So I do get it's not easy for everyone, but that would certainly be my way. And how we found our best deals have always been through direct to vendor.
Yeah, it might be worth talking about like the consistency and the volume that you actually put out in these direct vendor campaigns, because a few people that might be listening might have put a few letters through the letterbox and
Yeah.
gone, I haven't got anything back. Does it even work?
Yeah, I've had a few.
It'd be good to hear like your like thoughts on that, and like this sheer volume that you put through people's letterboxes.
Yeah, well, I've had a few mates or a few people reached out to me on Facebook or Instagram and said like, oh, how'd you do it, and how often, and all that sort of stuff. And then they'll go away, and I'll always say, look, always stick a letter through someone's box. But they'll go away and they say, oh, look, it doesn't work in my area. I've done like 10 or 20 letters and I haven't got any response. And I was like, 10 or 20 letters, unless you're very, very lucky and stumble across the deal, you've got to do. I'm averaging 100 letters a week at the moment. So how I work that out is if I do roughly 5,000 letters a year, once we take out the 99.9% that goes in the bin, that results in, you might get 5, 6, 7, 8, potential deals, and then you buy X amount of those, whatever you can afford at the particular time, or raise the finance on. And then the ones that aren't exactly suitable for you, but obviously still have to be good deals, then you source on, and that's how we've gone about it. But yeah, we are doing letters 100 a week, every week now. Hasn't always been that. It might be some weeks we did 50s, some weeks we do more, but we're really being on top of that now. 100 letters a week, every week. We will do, just in a very basic spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet. I'm not IT savvy. It's also, the basic. If I won't show you my spreadsheet. If you did, you'd laugh at it. It's as basic as it comes. Basically, the property, what we know about the vendor. Do we know anything about them? We get the title deeds, so you can get those off land registry for £3. And then we write to the property, but we'll also write to the vendor's house. And that way you're covering both bases. And then you hope that they're going to get the letter. If they're interested, then they give you a call. Like I said, most don't give you a call. Some give you a call and give you a bit of abuse, which is always amusing to get. Not quite sure why people get so offended by them, if I'm honest. But yeah, so it just takes a hell of a lot of work. There's no way of sugarcoating it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of follow up. Even if your answer, more often than not, your first offer is declined, you go back to them, you go back to them, you go back to them. And we just diarise it every 2 months, maybe every 3 months, whatever it may be. Send the letter again. or if we've got a number from them, then we'll call them or text them or whatever it may be. Just keeping in contact, basically until they tell you to stop it. Keep doing it until they tell you to stop it. And then I had one, I think 3 years is the longest. 3 years is the longest I was writing to somebody. And I think I might have mentioned this to you when you came to our property, Joe, that I was writing to, it was a husband and wife directors of a property, nine units in a really good area in Birmingham that I was really, really keen to buy. So after about 3 years of the letters, he called me up and he said, I'm from blah, blah, blah property. And I thought, oh, here we go. He's going to have a go at me because I've been sending letters everywhere. I'd sent them to his current house, his new house, his business, which was no longer in operation, his wife's business. She then set up another business. I'd sent it to there as well. So I'd sent it to basically anywhere that I could possibly find any evidence that there'd ever been. So he called me up, but he was an old Irish boy, and he said, "Look, I appreciate your tenacity." He said, "Happy to show you the property. We are now thinking of selling." Now, unfortunately, it's not a happy ending on that one. Somebody else did get it over me, which I still drive past it every day, and I'm furious about. But I felt I deserved it after 3 years of letters, but he clearly didn't. So yeah, somebody picked me on that one. But yeah, so 3 years would be the longest I've sent letters probably to that guy and got a response. I've sent letters for longer, but yeah, those people still aren't responding, so we'll still keep going.
Yeah. And have you got any advice for people, how you kind of illustrate your point across to them? Do you do it in quite a professional way, with your company stamp on it, for example, or?
Yeah, I think my honest answer is I don't think it really matters what you're saying or how you come across. I think a lot of people ask me, and I've passed on my exact letter of what we do. But I don't think it really matters what you do as long as you do it consistently, because very rare someone's gonna look at your letter the first time, no matter what you put on it. Like there's only so much you can put on it. I'm blah blah blah. We're looking to buy your property. If you're interested, let us know. We do put our logo on it. We do put our obviously our contact details. But really that's the long and short of it. There's no secret sauce, there's no shortcut, there's no like if you put it in this type of writing, this italic font or whatever, like we haven't found anything changes. The only thing that matters is the more you do, the more results. It's a numbers game. So I think people worry a little bit too much sometimes. I don't know what to say, or can you send me a letter? And I do. Like I've got no problem with that. But I just think it's more about. I think that's people's fear. And I get that because I have that with certain things as well. I think it's their fear of starting. So they want everything to be perfect. You want your business cards to be perfect, and you want your letters to be perfect, and you want your Facebook and your Instagram, everything has to be perfect. Whereas I would just say, just get it out, get your letter out. And if you find actually, well, maybe the wording could be done a bit better, just change it. It doesn't really matter. As long as they're getting your letter consistently, sorry, if and when they decide to sell and your letter lands on their table or in the letterbox, then they'll hopefully call you. Some will and some won't. Some will never ever contact you because they don't believe in the way that you do things. They'll always use an estate agent. You can't convince them of that. And putting it in a certain type of envelope or certain type of writing, that's not going to change anything. So yeah, for anyone who's thinking about just get something out there. I mean, I'm more than happy to send them our letter, but it's not going to work wonders for them. It's like I said, 99.9% is thrown in the bin. It's just a numbers game. Get your numbers out, keep going back to them. Don't stop after 4 or 5 letters. Just keep going. And yeah, they'll come in.
I think that's great advice. And also on the back of that as well, you've got multiple deals that you haven't actually been able to take on for yourself that you've then gone on to invest and said, look, I've got this deal. Are you interested? And for someone who's listening, it might not have the money to actually invest. They can still find these deals and make a substantial amount of money just from sourcing these deals on.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, when you were at our property in Solihull, you probably don't remember the call that I took, and I said to the landlord. So we've agreed that purchase, and an investor's buying that off me for, I think it's 22K. So yeah, there's a lot of money to be made. If you find there's more, how can I phrase this? It's harder to find a deal than it is money, which sounds a strange thing to say. Like there's quite a lot of people out there with money, but there's no one out there with hundreds of deals, like amazing deals. No one has hundreds of deals. You might have a pipeline of 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, but no one's got 10, 20, 30 like amazing deals. They are hard to come by. So if you find a deal, you might not have the money. I wouldn't let that stop you at all. You will find somebody to buy that deal. If you find a great deal, you shout about it in some of the Facebook, we'll talk about this, some of the Facebook groups or Instagram, whatever it may be, you will find someone who will buy that deal and they will pay you handsomely for it. So yeah, don't hold back. Just get your letters out there and yeah, and hopefully reap the benefits. So
Yeah. So one of these letters, you actually went on to buy, and we actually made a YouTube video about it. It's titled, it's quite clickbaity to be fair. It's one building to 12-bed HMO, and but it's actually 3 flats into 4-bed HMO, 3 times of them. And yeah, so it'd be good to break down that deal in a bit more, context, how you actually found the deal, the vendor situation, at the actual purchase price, what you did in terms of the refurb and stuff. Can you give us a bit of
yeah,
context?
absolutely. Yeah, we're both guilty of using a clickbait title on that one, aren't we? It sounds interesting to say you've got a 12-bed HMO without any planning. That immediately thinks, well, geez, how has he done that? But it's not exactly true. It's like you say, it's one building, one title, but it's 3 4-bed HMOs. So yeah, I'll come on to that of exactly how we've done that. But so how did I find that? I found that initially through direct to vendor again. Reached out to the landlord, and the landlord at the time responded and was considering selling, but he, as usual, wanted far too much money for it, like obscene amounts of money for it. I think it was, I can't remember what it was, maybe 800,000 or something like that. And this is a property that's, it's a few flats, 4 flats he was using it as, but it's actually only got planning for 3 flats. So that would be an obscene amount of money. So it would never ever work at that sort of price. So kept in contact with him. I would follow up with him every now and then, but it never was sort of exactly got through to a deal. So he went to an agent, it didn't proceed, went to another agent, didn't proceed for whatever reason, then went to another agent, and then I arranged a viewing through them. A friend of mine actually introduced me to it. He'd got the email and told me about it when we went out for dinner. And he mentioned this property, and I said, "Oh, I know that property well. I know the owner. I've been in contact with him for years." And he said, "Oh, well, here's the property." So I thought, look, I'll go and have a look at it again. And I'll see where we're at. So went to have a look at it, put in a low ball offer. Well, I say low ball offer, 470,000, and he accepted it. So I did my usual when I get a property offer accepted. I panic. I sort of get excited for a minute, and then I panic and think, right, where are we going? How are we going to fund it? What are we going to do with it? What's the overall plan? And then the mind starts working, and then you start thinking of what you're going to do, speak to friends about it, and people who are in the industry, and seeing what's the best use of this property. So what we knew is the property had it's not exactly planning permission, but it's a certificate of lawfulness for 3 flats. It'd been used as 3 flats. Obviously, it would have been a grand family house at one point. It's a really nice looking building in Solihull in West Midlands in Birmingham. So it's a really nice looking building, but it would have been a lovely family house at one point. From the 50s onwards, I think it's been used as 3 flats. So the previous owner who I bought from, got a cert of lawfulness for 3 flats. That basically means, for anyone who doesn't know what a cert of lawfulness is, it doesn't mean that you have planning, but it means that you can't be, what's the word? Planning can't come back against you to say, hold on, you're using it in an incorrect way. They can't enforce on you, because the cert of lawfulness legitimizes the use of what it currently is. So it's 3 flats. So our understanding then was, right, if it's 3 flats, we know that Solihull is a non-Article 4 area, which means you can change a C3 building into a C4. So C3 is just like a normal house or flat. C4 is a HMO up to 6 beds. So we knew then, obviously, we have 3 C3 units, 3 flats. We can then turn each flat, because the building is big enough. The building is about 320 square meters. We knew that we turn each flat into a small HMO. So 4-bed flat on the ground floor, 4-bed flat on the first floor, 4-bed flat on the top floor. So that's where we get our 12, hence our clickbaity title. But yeah, that's 12 tenants under one roof, I suppose. So that's how we found it. That was the plan of what we are doing with it. We're sort of midway through the refurb, if you like. Now we're just at boarding. We're finishing boarding this week, and the plasterers will start next week. So we've done first fix electrics, first fix plumbing. Obviously, stud work's gone up, so boarding has started. And yeah, we'll see that through. We'll probably finish back end of the year, maybe start of next year, January. And we'll be looking to obviously find tenants from there and get the property fully fully tenanted, and then we'll refinance and yeah, hopefully go again and find something similar. So that's basically the property. Yeah, really, really pleased with it. It's a good purchase. It's a really good building. It's in a peak area in Solihull. Great for it's a 3-minute walk to the train station. It's on a main road into Solihull and into Birmingham. So transport for tenants is going to be really, really good. So we don't anticipate any problems. We should get really good rents because out of most of I think we've got 8 going to be self-contained studios. So they'll have their own oven, hob. All the bedrooms are en suites, all good sized bedrooms. So yeah, really, really pleased with it. And the progress is going really well.
So there is, we discussed it on the day, but we're good to talk about in terms of the actual building regs and what you've actually had to comply with to get these 3 HMOs within under one roof, essentially. What have you actually had to comply with in terms of the building regs to get that?
Yeah, it's fairly standard with regards to like any HMO you have to do. You have to, fireboard more places than you would if it was I don't know, just a 1-bedroom flat or a family house. Obviously, you've got to do the fire doors, interlinked smoke alarm. I think it's grade A panel alarm system at the front. I think we're having to put in a what do they call it? AOV window, automatic open vent. So if there's a fire, that just opens up, and obviously the smoke can leave the building. So that's going in on the top floor. So there's certain things like that. We've had to put some soundproofing in between each unit, which you usually wouldn't have to necessarily do, I believe. If it was if it was just a normal 4-bed or 5-6 bed HMO, I don't believe you have to do that between each unit. But ours is free, obviously C3 units, if you like, change it into free C4 units. So we've had to soundproof in between. So we've had to lower the ceilings anyway. The ceilings were huge. I mean, I think 3.2, 3.6 in some areas. So the ceilings were ridiculously high. Regardless, we were going to drop the ceilings because we're running through the drainage and electrics, and all first fix was running through there. So we would have always dropped the ceilings. But yeah, we've put the metal framing in, and so we've got to pass sound testing for that. So yeah, my architect specified what we needed, and then my builder, who is an investor himself, he's doing a really good job. He's a local investor, not in Birmingham, but in Rugby, which is nearby. He's done lots of projects, HMO projects for himself and for other investors. So got him on board, and he's running the job. Reason I've got him to do that is because it's a time-consuming thing, really. And I've done this to you, we might have mentioned this before. I've done this on other properties that I've gone in, and I'm there every day, project managing, or even going back to brick, helping out myself. But then that detracts me from looking for the next deal. My skill set is not in going back to brick and, don't really know what I'm doing or how to hold a hammer. So my best thing to do is really go and concentrate on finding another deal, either for us and our business partner, or to find another deal that I can source on to other investors. It's not not the best use of my time. So brought the guys in, doing a really, really good job, and they're well used to all the regs that you have to comply with. And yeah, doing a really good job, and looking forward to showing you the end product when it's finished.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to get a like before and after video.
Yeah, they're always, everyone loves the homes under the hammer, the before and afterwards, don't they? It's yeah, they don't see the hard work and the tears in between. But yeah, it's it'd be nice to see the before and afterwards, because obviously you got a lot of footage there, and I think it's going to be a pretty impressive building. So yeah, and I look forward to showing you that one.
Yeah, so the project management side of it all, that's quite a good bit of golden nugget, really. So if you find this deal, get a builder on site that's actually going to essentially act as the site manager, really.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. He's got his team on board, his team of people that he always uses. So I'd seen that this guy, I'd met him some years ago at a networking event, and I seen the quality of his finish on his Facebook and Instagram posts and things like that. So I knew he does it to a very, very high end. I know he gets very good rents, which is obviously what we usually go for ourselves. We want to do it high end. We want to be right at the top end of the market. So I knew that he does that. So he was the ideal person to bring on board here. And he's just got that team. Whereas I've got a plumber, I've got an electrician, but it's about having those labourers that you need to come in and go back to brick. It's about having them as and when you need them. Otherwise, if you're not using them all the time, and only every 6 months or a year you come to them, they're not going to prioritize your job. So it was just easier to get get the project manager and this builder to do it, and let him concentrate on what he's good at, and let me do what I can do.
100%. And so this particular project was investor funded, right?
Yeah, well, we've got a business. We set up a new limited company on this one, and we've got an investor who'd seen some posts on either Facebook or Instagram, I'm not sure, and approached us and said, "Look, we've got some funds. We'd like to be able to start building some some asset base, and with property, and get some recurring income coming in." So they said, "Look, if you ever get anything, let us know." Ran it past him when it came in, and he said, "Yeah, we're good to go." So know them really, really well. Really, really good guys. Very trustworthy. It's not like I've just met them 2 weeks ago at a networking event and we jumped into sort of bed together. You know, I wouldn't advise that to anyone. You hear all the horror stories, don't you? So I've known these guys years. So yeah, I was more than happy to go into business with them. So they funded the purchase. Sorry, they funded the build, and then we'll refinance at the end. And with the figures that we're looking at, I think they should get either all their money back out or the vast majority of the money back out, and then obviously they've got the asset, and we'll keep the asset, and and it'll bring in a good amount of money every month as well. So yeah, it should be a good one.
So for this particular deal, it was joint ventured, right? So you
Yeah,
just right, so I found the deal. You bring the money. Let's join forces essentially, and
yeah.
then and then is that going to be a relationship you build together, sort of thing, a company that you build together?
I think so. Yeah, certainly. If something else comes in, it works very well from their point of view. They're busy doing their thing. They leave me to find the properties, run it past them, obviously, and get the go ahead. But they're not. They're not wanting updates every minute. They're not questioning my decisions. They trust that I know what I'm doing on my side, which obviously I like to believe I do. So yeah, so it's working really well so far. Obviously, you never know, that could change, but it's working really well. And yeah, absolutely, we'd like to go again and again and again. Why would we not, if we can buy these larger properties and then get the vast majority of our money back out, and then yeah, really start adding more units into the portfolio for sure.
Excellent. So we spoke about it before, but you've had a few challenges, a few downs on your journey so far. One being having to evict a tenant for not paying. It'll be good. It'll be good to kind of hear from your point of view the process behind that. A lot of people talk about how much return on investment you can get and everything like that, but no one really talks about what would happen if, say, for example, they stop paying, and what would you actually do an investor in that situation?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear at the moment. I'm looking in the or maybe it's just the landlord groups that I'm looking in. A lot, and actually a lot of tenants that I'm speaking to are coming to view our properties. I say, why are you looking to move from your place? And they said, oh, our landlords are selling. So I think a lot of landlords are selling, and there's various reasons behind that. But certainly a big one is non-paying tenants, and obviously it's inevitable. It's just when it's going to come in, they're getting rid of Section 21. So Section 21 is, what do they call it? No fault eviction. You basically don't have to give a reason. You just give 2 months notice, and then in theory, the tenant needs to move out. So sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So we've got one at the moment. We've got a court date set for this month. The tenant, I think he stopped paying actually first before, yeah. So he stopped paying. So he was in. You can only issue a Section 21 if it's a 6 month tenancy. You can only issue it after 4 months. I'm going to get technical and boring now, so anyone listening to this, if they want to fast forward this bit, they can do. But it's if it's a 6 month tenancy, you can only issue it after 4 months. You can't issue it straight away. For example, if a tenant's not paying straight away, you can't issue it till 4 months. We unfortunately, and we very rarely do this, so lesson learned, we went with a 12-month tenancy. So we couldn't issue a Section 21 till 10 months, but he was only 5 or 6 months into the tenancy when he stopped paying. So we had to then wait for 2 months for him to not pay. So what's that? Probably £1,400 he owed. And then we could issue a Section 8. So a Section 8, you have to give a reason. Our reason was obviously for non-payment of rent. So where are we now? Fast forward to this month, August, and we've got a court date. I think he owes us £5,000 now, and we'll see. We'll get the judge will definitely tell him to go because he hasn't paid his rent. but we'll see if he goes. If he doesn't go, then you've got to appoint a bailiff, and that adds a few more months on. So, it's going to be the best part of 8 months, maybe a year, by the time you get rid of someone. So I can understand why landlords are worried about that, because that's a lot of money, isn't it? That's, really by the end of it, we're going to be owed, maybe 7 grand or something like that. Or if you have a property in London, let's say, and the rent is 1,500 a month, or 2 grand or 2.5 grand a month, and someone doesn't pay, you times that by a year, that's a huge amount of money not to be having, and you've still got to pay your mortgage all the time. So yeah, it's a frustrating part of it. I have to try. There's two parts to me. There's, whether I should admit this or not, one part of me that wants to go around and kill him, not literally kill him, but I don't know. I have these weird thoughts, and then the other part, you have to remember. Well, look, it's a business. It's a cost of doing business, and there are going to be certain people who aren't going to pay their rent. If this is the business that we're in, and it's going to be property rentals and buy more and more properties, then we have to get used to the fact there are going to be people who aren't going to pay their rent. So thankfully, it's a very small percentage of people. I think if you listen to the news or listen to the landlord groups on Facebook, you'd believe, if you believed what you read, that every other tenant doesn't pay rent. But nobody tells you about the tenants that do pay rent. Like, nobody talks about that. So it's not, again, it's the vast majority, 99.99% of tenants pay rent, and you get the odd bad apple or whatever who doesn't pay their rent. Frustrating as it is, but you've got to go through the process. It's not like the old school days where you hear about these landlords and they're chucking people out. And they actually, ironically, probably made it worse. These old school landlords who did that have made it worse and harder for legitimate landlords like ourselves, to get rid of people, to get rid of tenants if they're not paying. So yeah, it's a frustrating process, but it is what it is. Try not to dwell on it too much. Try not
Right.
to
Is
let it.
there any things that you've learned from the process, like keeping a buffer of cash, for example, just in case these things do crop up, or
Yeah,
insurances that you can get in place, for example?
we've never done the insurance wise. Most insurance favors insurance company, and they'll also look to find a way to back out of it in some way or other. That's only our experience. Whether you haven't done this right, you haven't done that right, or whatever it may be. So we've never gone down the insurance route. Maybe it is something we should look at. But like I said, 99% of the time, most tenants pay, so it's absolutely fine. You're absolutely right. You've got to have a buffer in place. You can't be spending every penny that of rent that comes in, because not only that, you might have a boiler go, or you might have a void, or you might have whatever. So you've got to have money in place to allow you that buffer, like you said, to stomach that if something goes wrong or someone doesn't pay. What I would say is it becomes easier the more properties you have. If you only have one and they don't pay, then that's hard to stomach, because you're still paying a mortgage and you've only got one. We've thankfully got more than one, so therefore the rents from that we're allowed to stack up will cover obviously the mortgage that he isn't, or the rent that he's not paying, and therefore we have to pay our mortgage. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You've got to have a buffer. It's the most sensible way of doing things, for sure.
It'd be good to talk about the power of network as well, because you've got a 6 weekly group that you meet up with, and discuss your successes, failures, all the things that are happening in your city in Birmingham.
Yeah.
You definitely recommend getting with local investors as well, just to talk things over as well.
Yeah, I think this is something I was too slow to do. I never did any networking really. It was all solo, go and do your thing, keep quiet about it, didn't post on social media. And that's probably my two biggest learnings, I suppose. Definitely get around people who are doing bigger than you, same as you, or maybe even just starting out, whatever it may be, but in the same area as you. So then you can talk about deals. Like, we went out last night. There's 10 of us who go and meet, and we go to a different restaurant every 6 to 8 weeks, and then we talk about updates, what we're buying, what we're selling, what problems you got with tenants, how did you go about that refurb, what are you doing this, why are you doing it that way. And it just challenges you, because property is and can be a lonely existence, really. You're in your my home office most of the time, sending out letters and just mulling over with my thoughts about certain deals, or what you can do, or how you should do it. So just to get someone else's opinion, sometimes there's one particular deal that it's our biggest deal to date yet, actually. It's a block of 6 flats on 0.8 of an acre. So I got the opportunity to buy that one, again, direct to vendor. But like any good deal, every good deal that you ever come across, there's challenges. It's never easy. It's never straightforward. Oh, here's a really good deal. Here, do you want to go and buy it for really, really, really cheap? It doesn't work that way. There's always some element that you've got to overcome, which has put off other people before. So this particular one had a few, and one of them was that it had no planning for the 6 flats, and it wasn't going to be easy to get a certificate of lawfulness either. So I had spoke to the group, and a couple of people just give me bits of advice and whatever. So truth be told, if I didn't have that group, would I have pulled out of that deal? Quite possibly, I think, because when you're out of your comfort zone and you're doing bigger deals than you're used to, sometimes depend on your risk appetite and the way you are, but you're sometimes almost looking for a way out. Like, is this something I should be doing? The demons in your head start talking you out of it. You don't need to be. It's the biggest purchase price. There's too many risks involved. Um, so it's easy to sort yourself out of that. So when you get and you meet up with your group or whoever it may be, and it could be online, it could be networking meetings face to face, it could be dinner, it could be whatever you want it to be. But for ours in particular, it's to go out for dinner and just to get a couple of words and saying like, "Oh no, that's a really good deal. I wouldn't walk away." Or even I think one of the guys said, "Look, if you don't buy it, I'll buy it." And then I knew I was like, "Okay, yeah, it's a really good deal." Then if he's offering to buy it, so and he keeps pestering me to buy it ever since. So I knew it was a really good deal. I knew it shouldn't be walked away from. I knew I had to find a way to sort it, and with a couple of bits of advice from the networking group, I was able to do it, and we got the cert lawfulness, and we're now in planning for 14 apartment scheme on the side of that plot of land that we bought. So yeah, really really pleased. I didn't walk away from that. That's just one example of networking though, where it's really really benefited. There's others. Again, one of the group advised me on how to do the layout of a particular property, which would allow me to have 2 tenants in instead of one, which brings in an extra, what's that tenant bringing in? Probably an extra £800 a month. So again, probably brings another maybe 50, 60K of GDV on the end project. So, just these little snippets, throwaway comments from your friends, can have a really substantial difference to the projects that you're buying and the things that you're doing and how you do them. So yeah, I was wasted years not having any networking. That's absolutely something I think you need to do as soon as you can. I did it by identifying certain people in Birmingham that I saw are active, are doing things, and I was like, I need to have that person's ear. I need to be able to go to them to be able to ask them questions as and when I want. So it's almost like you're carefully selecting them. People say, be careful who you surround yourself with. That's very true, and that's what I attempted to do there. So
100%. So that 14-bed apartment, is that from the ground up then?
So basically, it's 0.8 of an acre, so it's a big old site, and there's just one block of 6 flats on the moment. So if you can imagine the site, it's very much on the left-hand side. The whole of the right-hand side, there was nothing on. So it made perfect sense. It's there was no TPOs, there was trees there, but there was no tree preservation orders. There was no conservation area. There was no reason why something else hasn't been built there. But the only reason was it was family owned for the last 100 years. So it'd been passed down, passed down, passed down. And obviously it eventually came to the lady who I bought it from. She passed away, passed it to her children, and they're based in different countries, and a couple of them are down south, I think. So they had no interest in it. So they were looking to sell. So my immediate thing was, look, if we can buy this block for the price that we bought it at, is roughly what these 6 flats are worth. So then anything on the land on the side is almost like a free plot of land, if you like. So that was my thought process of deal analysis on it. So we got the building at the price we wanted, and we've just put in 2 or 3 months ago for planning for 14 flats. I think it's 9. Can't remember the exact. I think it might be 9, 8 or 9 2 beds, 2 3 beds, and yeah, the rest is 1 bed. So that's in with Birmingham City Council. Like all councils, they are understaffed, to say the least. Birmingham Council's obviously gone bust, haven't they? Gone bankrupt. So staffing levels are we've already been told, are very, very low there. It took 2 months to validate my application. So usually it wouldn't take any time at all. They'd validate and say, look, we've got it, and thanks, and we'll be in contact when we get around to working on it. We've already been told it's going to be as and when we get to it. Don't expect it to be anytime soon, that sort of thing. But the benefit of that is the property is paying for itself because we've got a mortgage on the original building, and that covers the whole thing. So we can sit in planning and look, I want an answer as soon as possible. But really, if it took a year, it doesn't matter. It's not like I'm sitting on bridging, or something like that, where you've got a year to get in, get out, get your planning. I don't have that. I can sit and wait if planning takes a little bit longer. So
Because you've de-risked it.
exactly, de-risked, exactly, yeah. Now I bought it risky because I bought it on a bridge, like I've mentioned, without cert of lawfulness. Now, if I didn't get the cert of lawfulness, how was I going to get off the bridge? That was the risk that I was sort of willing to take. But we got the cert of lawfulness eventually. It took ages, but we got it. And then when we got the cert of lawfulness, that meant that we could get a mortgage on the building, and then we can relax, get off the bridge, which is obviously the main thing. It's always the main panic, and then we can look into putting in an application for the 14 new flats. So load of learnings on that, because new build, although I have built my own house, this is a different ball game. 14 new flats is obviously a lot bigger. It's a big lump for building. So many new things with bionet gain just recently come in, so I've had to learn a bit about that. Learning so many different things on this, so it'll be interesting. It puts you out your comfort zone again, but it just made perfect sense. Would I go and buy just a normal plot of land and build out 14 flats? Probably not. It's because I was almost, like I said, able to get that sort of free plot of land, if you like. It makes perfect sense to go and get planning for 14 flats if we can. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Like obviously, you're saying you're building from the ground up, but you've done that with your own home, and it'd be good to talk to you about this as well, because you said that the house that you're living in, you've lived there for 4 years.
yeah,
That's the longest you've ever lived in one house.
yeah.
So,
Up till 5 or 10 years ago, I think I'd worked out I'd moved every 18 months, or maybe 2 years.
yeah.
So yeah, for 4 years, I'm already getting itchy feet now. I've been double the usual sort of time. Not that my wife's too happy about that, but yeah, 4 years is by far the longest I've ever lived anywhere. So
You,
yeah,
you almost have your own home as a business, don't you? For essentially like, buying it, doing it up, selling it, moving on.
That, well, that's it exactly. That was my upbringing. That was always what it was. You would go up the market, you would buy a better house, you would buy buy in a better area, but it would be run down. Dad would do it, mum and dad would do it up. Then you'd sell it, and then you'd go again, and then go again, and then go again. So that was always the way that I was brought up, and it was the way that me and my then girlfriend, now wife, Jen, have started. But we're settled, because it's a different ball game now. We've got kids now, so you can't be moving every couple. Well, you can, but we're talking of schools and all that sort of stuff, and we're near the schools now, so it settles you down a little bit. I can't be moving every 18 months to 2 years, so we'll see how long we stay here.
But it goes to show, though, isn't it? If you don't have the writing out money to, or not the investor, the network to do the property investment yourself, you can do it in your own house. Buy a house for yourself, residential, do it up, sell it, and then you go from buying to terrace, for example, semi-detached, and terrace, and a plot of land that you could potentially just have a little cottage on, and that's just through residential mortgages, right?
Well, some people use that as their only strategy, don't they? They just progress that way. They gain equity, sell it, and start again, start again. Next thing you know, they're in a £1 million house, because they played it that way. With our house, we probably jumped maybe 2 or 3 levels of moves that we wouldn't have been able to do. We couldn't afford to buy in this area for the house prices. The only way we were able to ever do it was buy a plot of land and build it ourselves. So so it's definitely a strategy that people can use, and a good one, because you've obviously got no capital gains. It's on your primary residence, so it's a nice way of sort of moving up the housing ladder and making some money whilst you do it.
So, what are the future plans for Compass Property Solutions then? Have you got any idea? Obviously, you've got this HMO strategy now.
Yeah.
Is it now the case of just sheer, increasing, scaling it up?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not putting a number on it anymore. I previously I wanted X amount of units by when I was 40. I turned 40 in January, so I had that before. It was more or a guide as such, something to keep you on your toes, and on those days where you might not feel like working, you're like, oh no, I better get some more letters out. I'm not quite where I want to be. So we had that. I had that when I was, I wanted 40 units by 40. Now I'm not really putting a number on it, because it's difficult to say. It's really dependent on what's going to come in, but we will still be buying. I want to buy for ourselves in Compass. I want to buy with our investors that we've bought the Solihull project in. They're very keen to buy more and more. So I'm already on the lookout for some more for those. And obviously with the 14 new flats that we've got, hopefully that we're going to get planning, will we hear the back end of this year, maybe start of next year, hopefully. So then we've got that to build out. And then yeah, just keep buying as and when. But I'm not really putting a number on it as such, because it's too hard to put a number on it, because you don't know what's going to come in from the letters. You don't know what's going to come in on Rightmove, what deals that you can find. And we've sort of, not saying we're selective. Well, we are selective about it. Yeah, we are selective about it, because it needs to tick certain criteria. It needs to, be in certain areas. We're probably a bit more selective now, in that we want to buy in only certain areas of Birmingham. We're probably a bit more flexible before, but once you start getting a few more, you can be a little bit more selective. So yeah, just adding to both companies really. Doing a lot more sourcing, hopefully. And yeah, just keep buying as and when these deals come available, multi-unit freehold blocks or larger HMOs. Really, I probably wouldn't do a smaller HMO. It needs to be a bigger one, because that's where the bigger cash flow is really. So just more and more of the same, I think.
Yeah, and obviously, once you refinance that, the Warwick Road property, for example, you can just keep going again with the investors as well for that one.
Well, that's it. They're very keen to do more and more, really. So I'm already talking to them about some properties that we've looked at, or that I'm negotiating on. We're not quite there on the prices, but yeah, the timing wise will work, because anything that we buy now will probably go through. Where are we now? It's probably going to be, if you buy something now, it's going to be the start of 2025. Can't believe we're saying 2025, but yeah, start of 2025 is when they would go through. So really, we're going to be finished our Solihull project at that point. So then we'll be able to just maybe do funds from one into the other and go again. So yeah, they're absolutely keen to go again. Again, where they're at, and the stage they're at from the business that they have on the side. Again, it doesn't work for them to do smaller deals. Really, it has to be bigger deals like this. Again, I won't say 12-bed, 3-bed HMOs.
Yeah.
So 12 tenants, let's say. It makes sense for them to be buying those deals, and it makes sense for us to be. There has to obviously be enough in it for a partnership. Otherwise, why would you do it? So yeah, buying more of those bigger deals. I find there's less competition at that size of a deal as well. I think if you're going to look at single lets or properties in under 200 grand, I think there's a lot of people with that amount of money, or they can raise that amount of money. Once you start getting up to 400, 500, 600 grand, bigger properties, there's a lot less people willing to take that risk. I think there's a lot less people with that, naturally, with that amount of money, and then with the refurb money on top. So there's a lot less interest, and therefore you are sometimes able to negotiate a bit better, get it at a price you want, or terms that you want. For example, the Solihull project, the owner didn't want to sell vacant possession. He wanted to sell with the tenants in, but the tenants had been there 10 years and were paying like 20p rent or whatever it may be, something stupid. It wasn't, obviously, but a couple of £100 I think they were paying. So it didn't work for us to keep them. It obviously would stop us going and doing what we wanted to do. Getting rid of tenants, as we've already discussed, is difficult to do. So, but I suppose if he had loads of other people who were willing to offer the same price that I was, and they were willing to take it with the tenants, then he would have gone with them. But because, like I say, the purchase price is higher, 470, there are less people with that amount of money available, and you're able to negotiate on something. Maybe the price, maybe the terms, maybe with vacant possession, whatever it may be, you can sort of tilt it in your favour, if you like. So yeah.
Excellent. If you want to see Ciaran's latest project, where essentially converts 3 flats into 3 4-bed HMOs, we've got it on my YouTube channel, and hopefully when Ciaran actually completes the project, we'll come back down again and see how the numbers actually have worked, and how this can work in real life. If anyone wants to get in touch with yourself, Ciaran, how would they reach out?
Yeah, Facebook, you can get me, Ciaran Durkin. I'll spell it out because it's the Irish version of Ciaran, and people have no idea. So Ciaran. I'm sure Joe will link it somewhere. So Ciaran Durkin, Durkin. Instagram, we are Compass Property Solutions. So you can get us on either of those. You can send us a message. Got any questions or need to discuss anything, then yeah, feel free to give me a shout. I'm happy to talk about anything.
Excellent. Cheers for coming on, mate. And thanks for watching, everyone, guys. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for your time, Joe.